Namaste. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Shri Padavallabha Narasimha Saraswati. Shri Guru Dattatreya Namaha. Today, in this presentation, we'll be going little bit in detail about the shloka from chapter 7, 16th verse. But before we get into the shloka, this presentation will at a very high level explain what chapter 7 is all about. Chapter 7 from Bhagavad Gita is known as Jnana Vijnana Yoga. It is known as the Yoga of Wisdom and Realization. It contains in total 30 shlokas or verses. The first few shlokas are a connection from the chapter 6, where Lord Krishna explains how we can know him. And he talks about the various he talks about the various energies, the material and the spiritual energies that exist, and that explains that he is the source of all the energies that come into play in the material world. He also talks about the Brahman and the Maya and the three modes of energies, and then explains the four types of devotees, which is the 16th shloka, which we'll be going into detail about. Then he talks about the ignorant people or people with little or no knowledge who do not surrender to the divine will, and how one can attain freedom through the knowledge. From the chapter, at the end of chapter 6, Lord Krishna states that a true yogi is the one who has merged with the Supreme Self with the utmost devotion and is completely surrendered, given up himself, and does not differentiate between himself and the Supreme Self. Now, chapter 7 starts with Lord Krishna explaining how once we train our mind to meditate upon the infinite soul, how we can transcend the limitations and become one with the God. Now, jnana and vijnana are the words that are used frequently, and it would be good to understand the subtle differences between them. Now, jnana is pure knowledge and is pure wisdom, and it is paroksha knowledge, which means the same thing. It's a theoretical wisdom. It can be gained by study of scriptures and Vedas. Now, vijnana is taking that knowledge and applying in our day-to-day lives so that we can actually experience the, in this case, the supreme divine soul, and come to the self-realization or achieve moksha or enlightenment. In mundane terms, if you think about it, jnana is like theoretical physics and vijnana is like applied physics or engineering. Now, the first few shlokas from the first shloka and the fourth shloka is where Lord Krishna is explaining the difference between jnana and vijnana, and also telling Arjuna how out of thousands and thousands of spiritual seekers, only those who are disciplined, committed, and ardent are able to reach to the state where they are in direct experience of the infinite. Now, Lord Krishna then further proceeds to explain that he is the source of the material and spiritual energies. There are various types of energies in the universe, but at our physical level, we are at a gross material body. Now, all the human beings, and for that matter, all the species in existence, have the Jivatma, which is the spiritual energy or the soul consciousness, which still is perceiving itself as separate from the divine. And the Paramatma is the supreme soul, who is present in each and everything that has ever come into existence. Now, for us human beings, with the heart, mind, and soul combined together, is where we have the interplay of various energies, which give us the wisdom, the clarity, the genius to understand the truth behind the illusionary perceptions that we experience, and also give us the wisdom to invoke divine grace so we can do the self-realizing. If we have to understand how we are all the same, in every how the supreme soul is divided in every soul that is come into existence. The example of raindrop comes into mind. Water is water, whether it is present in the raindrop or in the river or in the oceans. However, when the drop itself might think of it as separate, but when it merges with the river, it becomes a drop in the river. When the river merges in the ocean, it is all ocean. Is the same drop that has transcended from being an individualistic single item or single point of entity, and then transformed into a group entity to the infinite entity. And that's what our Jivatma, Paramatma, and the subtle Sharira or Deha can be explained using this concept. Now, Lord Krishna also talks about the three modes of energies which come into play into all these various souls that cause a lot of activities to take place. The three gunas are known as sattva, rajas, and tamas. Now, Maya is the illusionary power of the Lord, which, with the interplay of these three gunas, causes various events to happen, various experiences to occur, and to be felt by the various living things. Now comes the 16th shloka in the chapter 7, where Lord says there are four types of devotees. Chaturvidha bhajante mam janas sakritinojjuna. Arto jignasurartharthi jnani cha bharadarshabha. The four types of devotees are Arti, Artharthi, Jignasu, and Jnani. Now, Arti is someone who understands and realizes the supreme nature of the God, however, prays to God in times of troubles to get relief. And we'll go in detail with each of these. One thing that I wanted to bring to attention here was that as we are born as a baby, we are in all the human beings are in this manava state where we are born with certain vasanas, where we carry our certain inherent tendencies based on the previous karmas and previous janmas. Now we transcend towards the truth beyond the materialistic perception, and that is the vasanala state, and eventually realize the truth, where you have the desire to realize who God is, and then become one with the God, which is the desireless state. So we go from the body to the heart to the mind to the soul state. Now, at the body state, we are mostly interested in safety consciousness and to the physiological consciousness. And this is where Arti are the virtuous people. They're virtuous because they do understand that God is the supreme power, hence Sukriti. Is Sukriti Arjuna is where it explains. They tend to be they tend to pray to be freed from troubles. And we have the examples of Gajendra and Draupadi, who had prayed to the God to help them in their troubled times. In our regular day-to-day lives, we pray to get rid of sickness. We pray for the safety of our near and dear ones. We pray to keep us safe in this pandemic situation. So we seek help and protection. That is Arti. Now, Artharti are the people who invoke God's grace to seek material prosperity. It could be wealth, it could be fame, it could be fortune, property. So they're trying to please the God so that the God blesses in turn with whatever the desires might be. And the examples here are Sugriva and Dhruva. Dhruva wanted the affection of his father, and he invoked Lord Narayana's blessings, and eventually he did also get what he sought. Same, Sugriva sought Sri Rama's help to defeat Bali and also to rule and gain back his kingdom. In our regular day-to-day lives, again, we might want promotion, we might want certain property that we want to buy, or it could be an award that somebody is trying to get at work. It could be a number of things which are materialistic in nature and which for a temporary time makes a human being happy. So that is Artharthi. Now both the Arti and the Artharthi, they are basically prompting the human being to pray to God based on desires. So the desire prompted actions, and that's why we call it as Kamya Karmi. Now, Jignasu is a person who's eager to know and understand God. Now, they also are seeking the grace of God, but they're seeking the grace of God not to fulfill the material desires, but to understand who God is, to understand the purpose of the existence, to understand why existence has come into play, and what is the purpose of each and their own self and each and individual separation existence, and they want to go beyond the dualistic nature and reach to the non-dualistic supreme soul. They also seek the guidance of a guru, and they're not interested in the material matter, which is the padartha, and they're seeking the higher truth, which is beyond the matter, and that is the yathartha. The examples are Parikshit and Uddhava. Now, one tries to gain this knowledge by the study of scriptures, by the studying of Vedas, or by seeking an guide. In this case, it's the guru. Jnani is someone who has reached that state of realizing that everything is God. They have actually experienced, knows the reality of the God, experience the limitless self, and are able to discriminate and differentiate between the truth, the reality, and the illusion or the Maya. They understand that Brahman is there everywhere, and they actually live in that state of constant surrender and revel in the divine consciousness, and hence have reached the state of Aham Brahmasmi. And they are known as the truly Jnani. Prahlada, Narada, Ramana Maharshi. We can take so many examples of yogis who have become Jnanis and have lived amongst us over the ages, being one with the God, and have helped have helped the humanity move along. And that concludes the 16th shloka. In the subsequent shlokas, Lord Krishna also talks about ignorant people who do not surrender to God, who do not surrender to the divine will. They try to worship other demigods, and based on their predisposed conditioning, they try to worship for the bodily pleasures. Kama, krodha, Isha, Kama, Isha, Krodha, Isha, right? That prompts them lust, greed, the negative aspects of the material desires. They could be impersonalists who are, pretending to be the yogis or the gurus, and then they could also be the less intelligent people who unfortunately have not had the wisdom to discern between the truth and the non-truth, and hence do not surrender to the divine will. In the end of the chapter 7, Lord Sri Krishna states that we can know Lord Sri Krishna as Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva, and Adhiyajna. He is the governing principle of material manifestation, because he's the source of all existence. And he also is governing all demigods, because whoever prays to him in whichever form, God fulfills the desires in that form. He's also governing all sacrifices, and everything goes to him and it emanates from him. And Lord also says that he reserves the right to reveal himself to the ignorant people or not. It's his choice. Now, when even with the last dying breath, if a human being knows that Lord Krishna is Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva, and Adhiyajna, then they can attain the freedom even in the last second of the death. And throughout the life, any seeker who practices the teachings that are in the various scriptures and tries to experience based on those teachings and lives lives according to them, they go through this transformating learning process, whether in one lives or multiple lives, and eventually will become one with the God, because that is the ultimate goal of all humanity. With that, we conclude the chapter 7. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to present. Dhanyavadaha. Om Shanti.